So for the podcast, we always do this little prayer. We do it either with the camera or without the camera. So, Dahlia, we're going to do this prayer that we always do just to make sure we're doing everything right. To the Father God, thank you for bringing everybody together to do this podcast. We have a lot of knowledge that we want to spread to the world, and we want to help guide them on what they're trying to do in their careers. Thank you, Dahlia, for coming on this podcast to talk about being a business analyst and telling your story. Thank you for Darius and his wife, Deshay, for coming on the podcast to help record this. So we're going to get this right and about to start it up. Thank you, Jordan, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Look, you probably have a security plus, maybe even a security clearance, but nobody taught you how to write poems or how to test a security control or submit an ATO package. I'm Chris Okpala. A few years ago, I was in your shoes, qualified on paper, but completely lost when it came to RMF. I had the degree, I had the search, I had the drive, but when somebody said how to test the AC2 control or validate stick finance, I had no clue what that actually looked like. Fast forward 5 years, I worked across DOD and federal agencies, led control assessments, written ATO package, and passed audits. That's why I built RMF Academy, to teach you the real-world execution. They don't cover in certification books. Inside, I'll show you how to write a poem and don't get bashed back. Test and validate security controls, translate tech jargon, navigate NIST 853, and RMF with confidence. If you're in IT supporting the government systems or stuck on the edge of cybersecurity, this is your way. The people who go through my training don't just get hired, they hit the ground running because they practice the work before day one. Go to rmfacademy.io and let's get to work. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Tech Woke Podcast. I am your host, Chris, an RMS specialist inside the Govtech space. And on today's podcast, we have a very, very great guest. We have Dahlia. Dahlia is going to break down how to be a business analyst. Dahlia is a certified Scrum Master, and she's also a certified Scrum product owner. So, without further ado, we're going to bring in a person that's going to give us the knowledge that we need to know. Dahlia, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the warm introduction.
No, I love it. For the guests, I always want to make sure that you're loved, that you're saying everything you're supposed to say. So I'm glad for you coming on.
I love that. Thank you so much.
How's your Saturday going?
Saturday's going good. I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this all week, so I'm happy.
I mean, everybody always comes on, right? They come on, they just think it's just, okay, we about to, nah, it's different. You different. It's lights, cameras, action. So
yeah, it is. It's good nerves, though, but I'm very excited. I'm excited to be here.
I got you. You do anything fun this weekend?
I did. So I wrapped up last week, the launch. So this week, I'm just kind of relaxing. And then, of course, church tomorrow. So
yeah, it's always church. And that was a great event that you had. I came through. Everybody at the event was loving, caring, how you broke down what business analyst is, the different roles, and how you're going to help people in the future. I can't wait to see you grow over the next 5 years?
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you again. And thank you for coming and for the donuts, of course. So that was a nice treat.
Listen, I was always taught to bring something. You know what I'm saying? I don't care if I bring a bag of chips. I'm going to bring something in that joint. You know what I'm saying?
That was polite. And they ate them up. I told you so.
Yeah, I hope they ain't no pounds off that, you know?
Listen, I only had one left. I had the coffee one, so that's the one I got. But yeah, they left me one, which was really nice of everyone.
Yeah, I got some now. I got one with actual bacon now, so.
Yeah, after this, I got it. I'm wearing white, so I had to be real classy.
So Dahlia, you know how we met, we was introduced through Fanta at GovTechCon. GovTechCon, shout out to GovTechCon. It was a very good event. Again, you just came out the blue, and then Fanta was like, hey, Dahlia, I'm thinking like how long you been knowing her? But
yeah, no, and it's so funny that you said that, because I think that when you do have a genuine connection and it feels like you've known that person for a really long time. So yeah, I ended up bumping into Fanta at a GovTechCon mixer. I just said, let me stop by. I heard this was in the area. I found out about it last minute. And I just really connected with her and her story. And then she really just was really adamant about me connecting with you and saying like, oh, I have to introduce you to someone. So that's how we got connected.
Man, that's the Lord. And then when we was talking, I was just like, okay, let me listen to what you got going on. And you was telling me about business, business analysts and the things that you're doing. You kind of broke down. You was in T-Mobile. You told me about, the trials and tribulations, and I didn't even know that you was African. So
Yeah. So that is also something. So I'm actually half West African, and then my mom's Caribbean. So both my parents are immigrants. I'm first generation American. I think we talked about that too.
we talked about it. We had this conversation probably at least 20 times.
Most people don't pick up. Most people don't pick up on it. Like they'll see my last name and they're like, But yeah, so half West African, West Indian, West African.
It's a crazy mix, though.
Yeah. So, but it makes sense. Both French speaking. That's how they got connected.
You speak a little French?
Enough to know when someone's talking about me.
Okay, that's good. That's good. That's all you need to know.
Here and there. So
yeah, all I know, I'm Igbo, so all I know is Kedu Adama. You know what I'm saying? But I gotta get better.
Yeah, the tribes are pretty interesting. So yeah, my dad speaks 2 languages, but Togo, it's a small French-speaking country in West Africa. So we border Ghana, so a lot of the culture is a little bit similar in the Volta region.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we're gonna get into this now. We're gonna break down what you do, your early life. How do you do what you do? What do you do what you do? So we're gonna go straight into it. So Dahlia, just so the audience can get a better understanding of you, tell me about your early life in high school. Was you into tech? Tell me about your life then.
I'm Dahlia, like you said. I went to high school in a small town right outside of Northern Virginia. In fact, I did all of high school in Virginia. I'm originally from New York City. I grew up in the Bronx as a kid. When I was about 13, I moved to Virginia, hence that culture shock of just completely small town, predominantly white area. So that was pretty interesting. I learned a lot from that experience. It taught me a lot. When I moved to Virginia, I didn't really know anybody in tech. No one in tech I didn't see that in the school that I went to. And in the household I grew up, an immigrant household, we're very big on education. There's a running joke in like the West African community, doctor, lawyer, engineer. For a lot of baby boomer parents of that generation, they really pushed that on us and on their kids. So when I would go home, that was what was being reinforced. But in terms of going at school, that really wasn't facilitated by a lot of my peers, or at least people who looked like me. But I did pretty decently in school. I definitely could have applied myself like much better, but pretty much an A/B student. And then there was always
just A/B student.
And then there was that
just A/B. You know what I'm saying? Okay, 1 C+. Okay.
For math that I always had to, from I would always try to get it up right before the semester was over. But for the most part, I was a pretty average student. I'll be honest. Procrastinated a little bit here and there. Definitely had a lot of potential, but wasn't exposed to tech or anybody who was within tech. Really, the only avenue to success that I kind of knew of or was told was pretty much staying within the lines of like, okay, you have the health route, you have, if you want to go to law school or engineering. So that was kind of the frame of mind I came from.
So the parents was kind of like, because I grew up in that immigrant household. My father's like engineer, but I was really good. I used to build all these buildings, or I wanted to become a doctor at one point. But when my father was explaining, like when I was going to school for biology and things like that, he was like, what you going to do with a biology degree? Which kind of does make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't do nothing with just the biology degree.
Yeah, but it gives you the prerequisites for where you want to be later in life when you do need to apply to medical school and vice versa.
Yeah,
that ended up being my path that I took, not biology per se, but health science. I ended up figuring out, okay, well, what am I going to do? I definitely knew I was going to go to college. It was kind of what was expected of me. But when it came time to picking a career, I kind of just chose, I felt like, what was safe or somewhat expected. So health science pretty much just seemed naturally. So I figured I'd figure it out after that. But that health science would give me the prerequisites to do something within the health field.
But it's something you didn't want to do.
At the time, I didn't realize that, but now in hindsight, it's not really what I wanted to do.
So you was kind of doing like what your parents wanted to do.
Yeah,
okay,
for sure.
Yeah, we all fall in that.
Right. But yeah, so that journey was pretty interesting. So after college, like I said, I went the health science route. I ended up going to ODU, which is also in Virginia. So it was a completely different, another culture shock for me. Being in the 757, that was a really cool experience. I learned a lot.
How was it a culture shock?
It was a major culture shock, not just education-wise, but also on a personal level, too, just finally having classes with people who looked like me, right? I wasn't exposed to that. Growing up in the Bronx, it's like also heavily Hispanic. So that's what I grew up with as a kid. And then in high school, it was predominantly white, small town vibes, kind of racist, a little bit rural in that area. And then going to ODU, where it's just like, okay, now I'm surrounded by a plethora of African American people, and how that experience shaped me and really opened me up to like a different side of myself.
Yeah, because you got a little street in you. You got a little street, just a little bit. You got a little street in you. If things go down, I know you about that life now.
Screaming, no, but it was a good experience. So I usually wear my hair in a fro.
Okay.
So I went natural with that whole experience, which was super cool. And I feel like going to that university and being in that area was a major part of tapping into that side of me.
So, but I would think like ODU is more majority. Is it a PWI? I would think it's more different races there.
That's so interesting because when I went to ODU, right, when I first went over there, it was labeled as a PWI. I got on campus. I was like, whoa, are you sure? And the side I was on campus was definitely like, I didn't see the PWI part until I was in class, right? But by the time I was our junior year, it tipped over. And then the minority, we became the majority. So then it actually transitioned to a minority service institute.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I didn't never know that.
Yeah, so it's no longer a PWI. It's a couple years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they got a little flavor down there.
Yeah, for sure.
They got a little bit of that Old Bay sprinkled in there. You know what I'm saying?
Something in that water for sure. But yeah, so I stayed over there till my senior year, and then I ended up just transferring to George Mason my senior year of college on a whim. Kind of had an epiphany. Again, I really liked ODU. Grades were really well as well, building community, but I didn't really know what my life was going to look like after college.
So you just like confused. You was like, I got this health science degree.
Pursuing this degree, I don't really know what I want to do with it, right? School is coming to an end, and I don't know what my life is going to look like after.
Paint that picture.
Confusing, frustrating, a lot of anxiety, right? Feeling like, okay, what's next? Because sometimes when you're in school, right, you feel productive, you feel like you're doing something, but at the end of it, you have to have something to show for, right? You have to have a return on your investment. So not just the degree, but what are you going to do with that? So I think that was just my intuition finally telling me, like, you know, maybe it's time to pivot, go down a different path.
Did you feel a little bit pressure from your people? So like your father, your mother, maybe like... Sure.
It was genuine me to kind of have that. And then I came to him. And then, of course, my dad was just more so like into Mason and vice versa. And I ended up transferring to Mason. It ended up being a really good fit for me. So I'm really glad that I did that. Loved both schools, got served by them in two completely different ways, which was beneficial to me in my journey. But yeah, transferring to Mason was great. Probably would have been a little bit better if I did it a little bit earlier. But it was still good and useful to me. But transferring to Mason just highlighted, okay, the path that I'm on right now, I don't think this is the path for me.
Okay, so you're about to graduate Mason. You're in Mason, about to graduate. Like, you kind of scared. You don't know what to do. You have anxiety. Like, what would you do after? Like, explain that process after.
So pretty much after I transferred to Mason, I ended up continuing my degree, got my degree in public health and finished off. And what I thought I was going to do was just go back to school, grad school, right? I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So it sounded like the most logical thing to do was just to get more educated. But I think that transfer and that pivot itself just showed me that although this is a good path, this is not the path for me. And I really needed to take some time just to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't want to look like I had it all figured out. I didn't just want to have another degree under my belt, but not really know what to do with it.
Collecting those degrees like affinity stones, right?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it could get real addictive and people are going to clap you up and congratulations. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I have to pay it back. So.
Yeah, because even with me, like, I got my master's, I got my bachelor's, I got all these certs, but at the end of the day, I didn't have to get my master's. I was just collecting them, not knowing what I really needed, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure. And so it was really bold of me to decide, like, you know what, I'm going to take some time to figure out what I want to do. I don't really know. And then to vocalize that and to say it, right? And especially coming from the background that I also came from. And then also being surrounded by peers who are doing really well and going on to their high-earning careers and, you know, their doctorate programs and law school and all these exciting things while I'm kind of like at a pause. trying to figure out what's next for me.
So did you feel like you weren't doing nothing or doing enough?
A little bit.
I'm seeing them.
Kind of. So eventually it trickles in. So at first, when you graduate and you take some time to figure yourself out, it feels so exciting. You're just glad to have a breather and a break and be done with school. Did a little bit of travel. I got kind of blessed with being in a position to be able to do that.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah. But then when that all comes down, you still have to deal with reality, right? And you start applying to jobs and you get rejected one after the other, after the other, after the other. And you're just like, man, I'm getting rejected to jobs that I think I want. I don't even really know if I want.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating and even more discouraging because you have to find the motivation to keep going. And how do you find that? So
basically, you out of college, what jobs did you have after? It's okay. It's a safe place. I'm not going to tell nobody,
Okay, I got rejected by every job under the sun.
Okay.
My first stint technically was working at a daycare. A friend of mine was like, hey, we're hiring for an assistant teacher. When I got there, it was a daycare job, right? Really cool. Love kids.
So you went from health to daycare?
Yeah, for like 3-4 months.
Okay.
Like, no, thank you.
Okay.
Love them, but that wasn't for me. So then I was just like, okay, let me do a little bit something closer to home. And I was commuting to that. So it was a cool experience, but it's a really big responsibility. And that wasn't for me. And then I remember like my car was in the shop for a couple of months, which kind of was unfortunate because being that I was already so secluded from all of my friends, lived about like an hour 15, hour and a half from DC, I'm kind of like stuck, limited to the hometown, right? The town that I went to high school in. So yeah, I just remember one day, after it all starts kicking in, feeling sorry for yourself. And my sister's like, listen, the T-Mobile store at the block is hiring. And my ex-store manager, he's looking for somebody. Just go over there. Just do something.
You worked at the Bremer Titans, the Titan school too, right? You was a teacher too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to bring that. I had to bring it up. But go ahead. Go ahead.
We'll definitely get into that. But yeah, so technically a small stint in working at a daycare. But then my first, I would consider like real job after college was working at T-Mobile.
And I know, so we have many conversations. I go to many events. I've seen you talk, and you talk about T-Mobile. Explain T-Mobile to me.
T-Mobile was, man, I have a love-hate relationship with T-Mobile. Definitely part of my work trauma, but also definitely a major stepping stone in my journey. And I recognize that I really wouldn't be where I am today without that experience particularly, which is why I bring it up so much. So working at T-Mobile was obviously the last place I ever wanted to be. I had a background in health science. I'm really not a technical person by nature, but I just ended up there, right? It was convenient. It was in proximity to me. They were hiring and I needed a job, right? So I ended up working at T-Mobile, obviously being the worst employee ever. I don't want to be there. So spoiled. And
I'm too...
crying on my lunch break.
Do you understand where I'm coming from? You got me with the outfit on and everything.
Man, it was like that. I was so dramatic, like the end of the world, straight out of college, like 22, 23. And I just didn't see myself being in that position in life.
Did you feel like you failed?
I did.
Okay.
I did. For a while, I did. I actually believe, and it sounds so silly to say now, but in hindsight, that was my first time ever failing at something and being where like I thought I would be so much further in life.
But is it a failure? But is it a failure?
It's not. I can't wait to get into it.
But go ahead.
It's not. But yeah, so I was a horrible employee, but my previous supervisor, he always says that if he wasn't so short staff, he would have fired me.
Dang, that's bad. That's bad. Dang. He's like,
right. So that goes on for a couple months. Me just not really putting much effort into it. And then I remember one day I got my head in the game. They had hired somebody after me, and my commission checks. It's a commission-based environment. My commission checks were like $10.
Okay.
Right? Per month.
$10. Okay.
And his coming out the gate was $700.
Okay, $700.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, I had no idea you could make that.
You can make some good money.
And my boss was like, yeah, that's what happens when you do your job.
Dang.
So the light bulb goes, but for me, it wasn't even about the money, but I think a new person coming in and watching that person outwork me and take advantage of an opportunity that I had been overlooking just highlighted like, oh, like, let me actually like apply myself, right? So I eventually came around, got my head in the game, started working on sales. The pandemic hits, and that's really what fuels all of this, right? I never planned on being at T-Mobile that long, but I ended up being there much longer than I anticipated. Pandemic hits, new worker comes in, he starts making a killing with commission. So I decided, all right, let me actually take this seriously. Let me apply myself. And from there, I developed sales skills. I worked my way up from a mobile expert. I get really good at sales to the point where I actually become the retail store manager.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, which is a funny enough story. Actually, that story and why I even became that, a lot of my stories start from insecurity, and I'll tell you why. Me being the retail store manager came from, I remember when that particular person, my coworker, had a goal for himself, and I was really inspired. I was like, I think I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna like actually put effort into it. I think I'm gonna make a $500 commission check. And I remember him and my manager at the time just started busting out laughing. And I was like, what's so funny? And they just started laughing at me because, again, coming from somebody who is making $10 per month, is really not applying themselves, is just doesn't want to be there, to all of a sudden, now you say that you're gonna make like this goal of yours. So then after that, like every single month, just developing the skill of beating him back to back to back to back to back and becoming obsessed with it. Through the pandemic, we clearly had nothing to do.
Yeah,
So
that hit me because like at first I'm not always this person that a lot of people see me on the podcast hustling.
yeah.
I used to be that person that didn't care. So when I used to tell people stuff, they used to laugh.
You, right.
I'm like, dang, and it hit me.
Yeah.
So when you actually do it, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, so that's pretty much what happened to me. So I got the bug to apply myself when I saw somebody else, doing really well. I was inspired by it. And then when I kind of vocalized that goal, nobody took me serious. So then I was just like, okay, I'm gonna show you. And eventually I always say that I'm not too technical, but I'm technical enough, right? So working in a store like T-Mobile, anybody comes through that store, right? You have people who are interested in technology. You have older people, you have vice versa, right? So the skill of selling something, somebody comes into the phone, there's something wrong with it. I'm not gonna, this sounds crazy, but I'm not the person you want to come to if you want to figure out what's wrong with your phone. I'm probably just gonna sell you a new one, right? So kind of developing that muscle and leaning into that ended up what made me successful in that role, and leaning into that skill set. So eventually I became the breadwinner month after month after month. And then the way that the story goes is just like, eventually, all right, let's give her a store to run. You're already making 2/3 of the sales in the store.
Oh, they gave you a whole store.
Yeah,
So
they
you
threw
was
that responsibility at me, and I was not prepared for that
dang.
whatsoever. To this day, that is the hardest thing I have ever had to do.
So you went from not the best worker,
Mediocre,
okay,
to
to this.
lead sales rep, to now, right? Here's a store, you're gonna run it. First of all, they baited me and told me that I was just gonna be the assistant. When I got the surprise, I'm like, oh, okay. Very naive, very green. And then fully understanding like, oh, I'm not just responsible for sales, I'm responsible for the merchandise, the inventory, staffing, hiring, firing, all of these things under the sun that goes into running a business. Literally, you're running a business that you don't own. So that, and then of course, ironically, my very first day, I remember I got to this new store, I was so excited, and everybody quit.
Dang.
Except for one person. And so I call my DM and I'm like, well, what do I, he's like, you gotta hire people. And I'm like, what? Like, so yeah, that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I always say, I've taken chemistry or mechanic thing, all the stuff like that, but being responsible for making a business profitable and then getting people tapping into their skill sets to allow us to all hit goal to make that business profitable is still the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. But I did it very well. And doing it well is actually what gave me the foundation for what I do now, which is being a business analyst. So I can tell you a little bit about that if you want.
So tell me about how being a store manager helped you for becoming a business analyst.
Yeah, so being a retail store manager definitely helped me out a lot. It was my foundation in business analysis, right? For the main thing, problem solving, critical thinking, creating roadmaps, but most importantly, right, understanding how the commission structure directly related to the sales and the trends that were within that industry that particular month, and then coming up with a game plan for the employees I had, conveying that to them in a way that would make the entire business profitable. That is the foundation of the skill set that I got as a retail store manager and what I do today. So really honing in on that skill set actually came from insecurity, right? Again, so being a retail store manager, you're constantly on the sales floor. You're the sales lead, you're a therapist, you're this, you're that. You're responsible for everything in between for running a business. And you can't do everything by yourself. So it got to the point I remember I was so burnt out with the sales and the trainings and all this stuff like that. I honestly couldn't keep up with the demand of the sales. And every month over month, the commission structure changes. So the way that I sell in 1 month, it looks different. So success in 1 month looks completely different than success in iPhone launch week versus vice versa, and so on and so forth. So it got to the point that we used to go over business data and business metrics over Power BI.
I know Power BI.
Yes.
I know Power BI.
That,
That's
right?
technical.
Yes, it is, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my boss was just like, just spend some time like getting to know Power BI, right? So eventually it got to the point where it's just like, all right, the store is growing, business is booming. I really can't keep up with the demands. I'm burning myself out. Let me actually try to figure out what all this stuff means, right? Like, what does 125% to goal month today mean, right? How does that affect my commission structure and vice versa? So it just started off with me spending 20 minutes of the start of the day before the employees came, before I opened up the store, looking at Power BI, trying to stare at it and figure out, okay, how do these numbers and percentages correlate to the commission structure for the month? And then how can I come up with an actionable game plan for the team and convey that to them and translate it like, hey, you need to sell X amount of iPhones, X amount of screen protectors, X amount of upgrades, and such and such. So doing that every single day and that skill of practicing it little by little was confusing at first, but eventually I got it and I realized it was a pattern. And then a bonus, I realized like, hold up, the more that I do this, the less I actually have to be on the sales floor and the less likely I am to be seen by somebody I went to high school with or vice versa, working in a field that I don't want to be in, right? So it got to the point where I got so good at understanding the data just by staring at it, because data tells a story. I could look at it and know exactly. That's the thing. Javi forgot to put that screen protector on that iPhone. I told him about that. Ooh, Daniel and blah, blah, blah. They're chit-chatting too much. Like, I could see it just from the business analytics. It told a story on what was happening in my store.
Do you think data really can tell like how things work?
Absolutely. If you understand the business and you know it like the back of your hand, like I happen to, you're able to understand the metrics of it because data absolutely does tell a story.
Yeah, because like even I watch NBA. So I watch NBA and I run a business myself.
Okay.
So the best thing, well, in NBA, they always be like, I want to get 30 points a game, right? Yeah. But it's a real, because most people, when they think 30 points, they're like, oh, I'm just going to score 30 points. Yeah. You got to really break it down. Yeah. 10 points here, right. 5 points here, right. Maybe get some free throws. Right. Same thing in business. What I'm learning now, okay, say I want to make $5,000 to $10,000 a month. How am I going to get to that? I have to break down what needs to be sold. Say if I got a course that's $97, I got to sell 50 of those.
Right. And then what happens when, economically something happens that, changes the culture, climate of stuff. So a certain amount of sales are down. How are you going to lean into other things, right? So it actually became fun to me, I'll be honest with you, because then this is where the strategy portion becomes because, okay, now a Sprint store up the block just closed. T-Mobile and Sprint had merged during that time. So now business went completely up. So my foot traffic is completely different, right? My post-paid conversion is impacted by this. What do I have to sell now? How am I going to pivot accordingly, right? So a manager who's not familiar with data, who's maybe immature a little bit in their leadership, will look at that and they'll try to oversell to compensate. And that's going to cost them money on the commission check and actually do worse for their commission. And a lot of people don't know that, but it got to the point where because I had that awareness and insight on how the data correlated to the business, whenever we were on business calls with my other coworkers, I can instantly listen to them like, you shouldn't have did that. Based on your business numbers, where you are a month today, that's not smart. the smarter thing for you to do would have been to prioritize an upgrade and added a feature to that. That would have made the difference between $1,000 on your commission check.
So basically using an accelerated business class.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know it. And just real live, like, life experience. But yeah, so it got to the point that for a while I was coasting, I kind of got to run the store pretty much from the back room and only come out when there were escalations. And if I hired a new employee, I would have them attached to my hip for like the first month to train them, to mold them, to develop them, and then release them when they were ready. And then I would pretty much just come in like kind of like a gardener, just like pruning and making sure that my garden was efficient and running like a well-oiled machine the way that I wanted it to be. And, but again, I stayed there like most people who don't really know what they want to do with their lives. You think that you have a plan and you're just going to be somewhere for a couple months, and a couple months turns into a couple years. And next thing you know, now you're doing something that you really didn't see yourself being in. And it got to the point where I was maxing out on my commission every single month, but outside of developing and nurturing my staff, I was really unhappy.
So you just like, I'm getting back. You know what I'm saying? I ain't about to leave. I'm going to stay here and just relax.
The crazy part about it is the money was never my motivation. Like at that time, I was really blessed. I was fortunate. I lived at home. I didn't have bills. But it was more so like under the umbrella of, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And then also a little bit of that competitive nature in me, just like the competition of it more so. Because I'm not going to lie, it kind of got fun. Like, you know, you start to compete with, on a small scale, you're competing, when you're a sales rep, you're competing with other reps. But when you're running a business and you start competing with your coworker who's running another store in a whole different state based off of business metrics, now that gets fun. Because it's like, oh, you didn't send me that iPhone that I asked you to transfer to my store? All right, bet. Now you're going to hear my name come up all the time on these business calls just to teach you a lesson.
It's like the NBA. Like, y'all both in the NBA, but y'all different teams. Like my team, you ain't about to beat me, but y'all still friends.
Exactly. But funny enough, one of the girls that you met last week at my launch party, she was a retail store manager. That's
she was. Oh, which one?
Shan Tall.
The light skin one?
No, tall with the braids.
Oh, I know her. I know
That's
her.
how we got close, because I ran a store in Virginia. I ran one of two stores in Virginia. She ran one in Maryland. And one day I was listening to her speak on a business call, and she couldn't understand why she wasn't getting paid out that month. And because I had gotten so good at seeing the data and they had posted the data for the entire district, I understood it. So I was just like, I FaceTimed her and I was like, hey, like, have you ever considered this? If you do XYZ, it's going to increase your commission check by about $1,500. You can pay your rent with that, right? And then we came up together. We came up with a game plan, and she applied it based on her employee skill sets. And she maxed out on her commission that month. And I remember it did a lot for like our relationship. But then that was the game changer. Like, wow, I've never even been to her store, but the fact that I can support her in that way just from looking at the data, I think I'm really onto something.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You're getting me more interested in the data. I kind of want to focus on this, but can you kind of show me the transition and slowly get to that?
So the transition honestly came when one day, honestly, somebody cursed me out.
Real bad.
Yes, working in customer service, you get everyone's emotions, everyone's all that stuff like that. You get the worst of it. And I just remember one day this man came in and he let it rip. I think it was like over like a $6 increase on his phone bill.
$6?
Child. And
must be stressed out. Stressed out in life.
And that's the reality of it. No, but that man, he was talking to me crazy. And I just remember like that was like my 13th reason. That was the icing on the cake. I was just like, I'm done. I don't even want to be here. You know, I love my staff. I love pouring into them, but I don't want to even do this. And I remember I was like, I don't even want to do this. Like, I just want to be a business analyst. And I don't even know where I got that. I think the reason why I said that was because, one, I was very analytical and I understood the business in a way that my peers didn't. And there was something that T-Mobile had on Microsoft Power BI that was called like business data and analytics. And I knew that better than any of my other 9 or like 10 other peers who also ran retail stores within the same district. So I knew I was good at that. And then I remember when he was just going off on me, that was the light bulb. I was just like, I'd rather be doing that than actually dealing with this, because when I'm just focused on the business, I don't have to engage with customers face to face.
Yeah, because that's basically what you was doing anyway.
Yeah. So, and I was doing consulting. I was consulting her for her business, and I would help other businesses that I hadn't gone to. But yeah, so I guess that was my canon event. That's when the light bulb clicked from.
Should have canon event. You're a Marvel fan.
For sure. Spider-Man. For sure.
Loki fan too.
Yeah. I love it. Miles Morales is my favorite.
Oh, for real?
I love him.
I can't wait till part 2.
Me too. Part 3, actually.
Part 3 now?
Yeah,
Oh, part 3.
Spider-Verse, Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Part 2 is my
Across the
favorite.
Spider-Verse. I don't know. It's something, but I'm waiting for it. It was supposed to come out last year.
Yeah, that's.
But yeah, so that was the light bulb in my head that I wanted to be a business analyst. And then from every decision that I made after that day that man cursed me out was like, all right, is this taking me closer to where I want to be? I did not know a business analyst. Didn't know what I needed to get there. I just knew, like, I'm tired of feeling this way. I'm not where I want to be in life. I'm disappointed, right? I'm upset, and I want more for myself.
So, and I like how you said that, because everybody has a canon event if you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's on a hero's journey. Some people are just not bold enough to take action.
Yeah.
So, Dahlia, if that canon event never happened, do you think you'll be where you at right now?
If that canon event never happened, I definitely think I would have left, but my story wouldn't have ended up the way that it is. So I don't really know how to answer it. So it's like yes and no. I wouldn't be here per se, but I know I would be somewhere else.
It'd probably be a different variant,
Yeah.
you know.
An alternate universe.
Yeah, this is because I always think about it. I'd be like, because I believe in God, one universe, all that, I believe. But I was just thinking, I'm like, is there a version of me that's the president, or is it a version of me that's in the NBA or in the NFL?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd just be curious.
Or a version of me that's a T-Mobile. No.
T-Mobile for the rest of your life?
District. Hell no.
No, but probably in corporate at that point.
Yeah, but I probably would have. But even that, it's so much a demand in being a market manager and a director, and I'm capable. The thing about me is anything I put my mind to, I can actually do it, which is really cool. And really, once I tap in, so it's not a matter of can I do it, but what does it cost you to be at that level of management and leadership? But yeah, so if that event didn't happen, I would be somewhere, but I wouldn't be here talking to you. I know that for a fact.
I understand. That's some African roots. You can do whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like being a Nigerian, I can be anything, but I choose. Once I find something interest, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But tell me about your progression.
Yeah, so, everything after that was, I said no to. If it wasn't alignment, I think the first thing I honestly did was ask for a demotion at work. I made some excuse.
You asked for a demotion?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
Because how am I trying to leave, but I still have a whole store I have to take care of? Like, trying to get rid of these kids respectfully and politely and, like, take a step back from that responsibility. So it's hard to, actively apply to jobs and put yourself out there, especially when I lived so far and I wasn't in proximity to DC the way that I am now. So I kind of just started off by like cutting out all the unnecessary things. So I took a pay cut. At that point, it was more important for me to make less to set myself up to catapult myself forward.
That's a big move. No, not too many people would do that. And that's how I know you were serious about making this change.
Yeah, I was fed up and I needed to get, unfortunately, I hate that about me. Sometimes it's like that rock bottom sometimes makes you like cushions you and makes you kind of like bounce back a little bit. But yeah, I was for real. So, moving with that intention. So it was a couple, I did it strategically, right? I started off by like weeding all the unnecessary things out, actively applying. And then a subcontractor had reached out to me on LinkedIn.
Oh, so so before you even transitioned to this role, did you know what you want to do? Did you know you want to be a business analyst?
Not really. I just knew I wanted to be a business analyst.
You just tailored your resume to that specific position?
Yeah, and I'll talk about what I did.
Okay.
So I worked for a franchise of T-Mobile, right? So I made sure on my resume had nothing to say with T-Mobile, right? Because I don't know. I just at that
paranoid. You more paranoid than me.
No, not that. It's nothing against that, but I think at that time I didn't want to be labeled like boxed in, right, as a retail store manager. So I just focused on my transferable skills. I was a manager at this franchise that's not as popular. People don't really know. And here are the technical skills that I have. Here's what I did, right? And from there, somebody off LinkedIn reached out to me for a functional analyst position.
So what are like transversable skills?
Data analysis, the ability to translate technical things to non-technical people and vice versa. Those leadership qualities.
So like, let me give you an example. Like too, and I agree with everything you're saying. So like transferable skills are something like maybe you use Microsoft Word, maybe you use Excel, maybe communication, Power BI,
contract negotiation,
anything that relates to what you're trying to do, correct?
management. Yeah. So just really highlighting, like, stop trying to make it so, because if I'm trying to get out of T-Mobile, why does my LinkedIn say, like, I sold X amount of phones? No.
Nobody cares about that.
Right. I increased store revenue by X amount, blah, 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 blah. Right. I was able to lead a team to blah, 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 blah. I was able to develop, nurture, train, hire, and staff and facilitate a business organization.
Oh, that sounds good.
XYZ. Yeah.
That sounds good. I would definitely try to, I'd be like, oh, that's what, I want to hire that person. That sounds way better.
Right. But I think that the younger version of myself, the more naive version, entry-level version of yourself, you're so surface level. You're not really thinking like overhead. You're kind of just like still thinking in a limited like sales mindset. And you have to like look outside of that, right?
Okay.
And not so focus on the details of what you did, but in broad, okay, what did you do?
Yeah, because like even when I was transitioning over, I put on, I did retail, I did this. I didn't have no real experience, so I had to manufacture from even school. I did RMF in school. I looked at these steps. I put it all on my resume, even the classes.
Yeah.
So you can get those keywords to click.
Yeah, like applied health statistics,
Yeah.
right? Technically, like I was doing statistics, right? And a lot of part for business analysis, right? When running a business, you want to know where you want to project your profit and losses. I need to know I'm not going to wait to get the commission check to, oh, I didn't hit goal. No, I need to project, am I on trend for obtaining that goal, for getting that payout, right? Based on where I am in the month right now, if I continue down the track that I'm on right now, where will I end in the month, right? I got that statistics, applied health statistics. I took that in college, right? That's also something that helped me out with that. So people don't realize that and they don't make those connections. And sometimes it's a little bit hard. But when you really look within, a lot of us already kind of have that experience, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, because a lot of people, they always explain, oh, yeah, I'm not qualified for this position. I'm not qualified for that position. But really, you are qualified. You just got to know how to
sell yourself.
Sell yourself. Sell yourself.
That is the main skill that I'm really grateful for, that I worked in retail and I worked in sales, because it taught me how to sell a phone. And if I know how to sell a phone, right, that means that I can sell any product, right? Because I sold a product that I didn't really care about. So now, right, when I'm pivoting and I'm going into a new space, it sounds dumb, but I'm the product. I'm the thing that I'm trying to sell to someone. I'm trying to convince you why you need me as a business analyst, why I would make a good business analyst.
Okay, so explain your interview process and explain your interactions to get this job.
So my interview process was, that's a tough question. I feel like I can show you better than I can kind of tell you, but a simple goal of mine whenever I'm in an interview is, honestly, I know that I'm on the right track when it goes from an interview to them training me for the role. A little bit manipulative, but something that I learned from sales is you're collecting data from someone every time they talk. I always want the customer to talk more than I'm talking. Talk. Tell me about your day. Tell me about your dog. Tell me about your second cousin twice removed. Talk. Tell me about your lifestyle, right? What you like, what you don't like, what you use your phone for, and vice versa. And then when I'm done collecting all that data, I hit you with this is why you need the green phone that's in my safe. Based on everything you told me. And I kind of do the same thing when I'm interviewing, right? So I think, the more naive version is like, you want to show, I can do X, Y, Z. No. Tell me what you need. Like, I saw the job description, but I want to know the culture of your store, right? Or your business or whatever organization that I've applied to. I want to know the names of the employees that work there. And then I end up flipping it. Okay, so when I'm working with John and and then eventually and I always get so when you start, sometimes they start doing that because I want them to envision me in the role. And the whole part about it is like, I have to get them to buy into the idea of seeing me work there before I'm already there yet. And I used to do the same thing at T-Mobile with the phones. I need you to get yourself envisioning using this phone before you've even bought it. because you're more likely to buy it when you can see it embedded into your lifestyle. Because you just told me your second cousin's twice removed. You just told me about your dog. You just told me about all these other things, right? And now I hit you with how this device, this product can service you. So now you can see yourself using it.
But a lot of people don't have the confidence to think they're the product. They just think they're just there. So so what you're telling the audience that is trying to get in these roles, you need to become the product and learn how to sell. Because even when I talk to you, as we're talking, I'm getting little tidbits to kind of get the interview better. You know, you're telling me about this. Oh, I can know how to mix this later. Or even if I'm working with somebody on a sales call, I'm asking them, okay, let me see your resume. Okay, I know I can get this sale because this resume is not good. And then I'm like, oh, they don't know this position. Oh, I can probably get an extra. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and just keep adding on. So you're selling yourself.
You're selling yourself 100%. You're selling yourself. And that's the major takeaway that I took a lot from that position particularly. Obviously, the foundation in business analytics and data. But 2, the ability to sell myself. And we do that whether you realize it or not, right? You're selling something whenever you're applying for a job. So yeah, I got my foot in the door through government contracting as a subcontractor. That was my first analyst position. And I was super excited and I hated it, right? They paid me a lot of money.
You was super excited, but you hated it?
Yeah, I was just like, I'm making all this money now. I've got this fancy title, but it's not what I thought it was, right? And the reality of it is I felt like my worst employee could do what I did in my first role, right, as a contractor, right, in my first analyst position. And I was writing a lot of SOPs, standard operating systems. I was getting coffee, doing things. I'm just like, okay, if you want to pay me, like...
They get coffee?
Right, and clean out the office and things. So it's like, I thought the role was going to be more technical than it actually was, but the nature of it was like heavy documentation and more so along the lines of executive assistant, right? But I had the title, and the agency that I work for carries weight. And to this day, whenever people interview me, they always pull back, oh, you worked for such and such, right? You supported such and such. But really, it's probably one of my more insignificant roles in a certain way. It's definitely an eye catcher on my resume. It was valuable in my journey because it gave me the foundation for documentation, which is a lot of the part of what I do now, right? As a business analyst, specifically within software development, coupled with that foundation that I got in data from T-Mobile. So going into my first analyst position, right? And then from that, I'm like, okay, didn't really like that. That came to, and I was very grateful, a little bit apprehensive about doing another analyst position, thinking that they all were like that. And then that second role as a federal contractor, that one is really what honed in on the skill set that I had now and really changed the game, because that was my introduction to being an analyst specifically in software development, which is now my specialty.
Oh, so, okay. So break down that process on how you became a data analyst specifically for software. And what does it entail?
Yeah, so currently my role is a business analyst in software development, right? So I work in tech as well. I know that you're in cybersecurity. I just happen to be within software development. And so essentially in software development, it's just the service of creating an application or a process that makes life easier for someone, right? And so people do it in the form of a product, hence product development, right? So think of it like this. A customer, a client has a problem, and a software developer gives them a solution to their problem in the form of a product, right? So think of it like this, right? Your phone is always cutting out. It's super annoying. You want to be able to FaceTime an Android user, and you have an iPhone and share emojis, but it's not, right? So the solution, right, that an Apple software developer is going to give you, what are they going to do, right? They're going to create a software that's going to allow you to do that, right? That is the product that is solving your problem, right? So that's software development in a nutshell, right? Providing you a solution based on the problem that you have, right?
Okay, so you're in that process. Say I have a problem. Say the problem is I want to create a software that can help me with YouTube clips. So you're helping on that team to create the product?
No, so your problem is, right, you have an issue cutting clips, right?
Okay.
It's irritating, it's annoying for you, it's not feasible, you're spending so much time, you're recording this podcast, right? But your turnover rate for releasing your episodes is delayed. Why? Because it takes so long for you to cut those clips, right? What's going to help you do that, right? A smart person on a tech, he's going to come together. They're like, all right, Chris has this problem, right? He wants to be able to release his episodes sooner. What is the issue? What is holding him back from doing that, right? It's the clip editing, right? How can we figure out a way to auto-generate clips for him so that his turnover with releasing his YouTube episodes are a lot quicker? So he's able to reach his audience faster and grow his business quicker.
So are you studying the data or are you creating the software?
I'm not creating the software, right? I'm supporting the creation of that software.
You're supporting it.
As the business analyst. Yep. And I'll tell you a little bit about how.
Okay. So, explain to me how do you do this? Because this is very interesting.
It is. And I actually enjoy it. So first of all, I kick off the development process, right? The development process starts with me, the business analyst. Why? Because I gather the requirements. So you'll hear this term often being used in the world of business analysis, right? Requirements gathering. What does it need? In a nutshell, it's figuring out what is needed to solve this problem, right? You have a problem, a software developer wants to give you a solution, right? So the business analyst has to be the one to open up the floodgates and figure out what's needed to solve that solution, right? Because at the gate, your problem wasn't even the clips, right? Your problem is the fact that you wanted a quicker turnover for releasing your episodes. Me as a business analyst, I have to come in and figure out why are you having a delayed release of episodes? Why is it taking you a week, 2 weeks to release episodes that you recorded a while ago, right? And then I have to figure that out and uncover it. What are your current processes like? What is your current way of doing things, right? How do you communicate with your producer, your sound guy, your this, your that?
So you're studying everything.
Yeah, is the clip generation even the best way to go about that? So I have to understand what the correct process is. I have to understand what your pain points are. And then I have to turn around, right, and convey that to software developers, right? I have to figure out a solution to that. So oftentimes what it entails is me sitting in meetings. I'm listening to people's problems, people's pain points, right? I'm trying to understand your end goal. Where do you want your business to be? Where do you want your YouTube page? What is the end goal of what you want to do? Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not just like, okay, you want to release episodes faster. No, your long-term goal is to reach an audience and get to X amount of subscribers. Right? So how is this application that we're going to create for you, that we're going to fix for you, going to funnel that?
Okay, this is very interesting.
I'm the one who has to understand that, break that down, create a list of requirements. From those requirements, translate that into technical requirements, right? Technical requirements being, because I can say, okay, he just needs a clip, but that doesn't mean anything to a developer. They speak a different language. So then I have to formulate that in a way that's constructed to them and the software that they currently use. But yeah, so we talk a little bit about kind of the initiation stage, what I do, kicking off the development process. Specifically, like we spoke about before, I'm a business analyst, specifically within software development. That just so happens to be on an IT team that's building an app for the client, right? So we spoke about gathering requirements, understanding what the customer needs, right? And whether it's even going to add to the success, right, of the business that they're running, right? And then translating those needs into technical requirements so that the software developers have a clear understanding of what they're building. But a major component to what I do as a business analyst, right, is being the middleman and the liaison for the customer as well as the technical team. So being the person to go back and forth, making sure that there's clear communication and understanding. So it's important that I'm engaging with the customer, right? Any roadblocks that the development team may have or questions that need answers, I'm the one who's going back and forth and making sure those questions are being met and understood.
Okay, so as a business analyst, like you're talking to the customer can be like, I want you to create a button. And then the developers are like, we can't create this button.
Yeah.
And you're the person that like, you're talking to him and talking to him and trying to meet a middle.
Yes. So definitely the middleman back and forth. But then it also goes back into the style of development that you're doing, which is super important, right? So I happen to be a BA that works in an agile Scrum environment. What does that mean, right? Mm-hmm. So specifically, right, it impacts development very broadly. As soon as you see that you're developing a software in an agile way, oh, this is different. right? This doesn't mean that, okay, you're gathering notes, you're taking notes, the customer wants this, this, and this, and then ta-da, this is the software that we're building. No, this means that this is a software that's being released in iterations, little by little by little over time, that's piece fed to the customer. And this also tells me that we're working in sprints, stages, right? So just because you say you want a button, okay, this doesn't mean that we're going to incorporate that into this current iteration of the application. First of all, I have to see if it's even feasible and in alignment with the end goal for what we want for you and the success of how it's going to impact your business. Because oftentimes clients will say they want XYZ, but me as a business analyst, like, this is not leading you any closer to where you actually want to be, right? So, and then oftentimes understanding like where that's going to fall in the priority of the product backlog, all those features that we have listed, prioritize. What's going to come out in the first iteration? What's going to come out in the second iteration? Are we on the right track? Are we on the right page, right? A large part of what I do too is demoing, right? So demoing the finished and unfinished product, right? Let's show you what the developers have been working on to make sure that you're moving in the right direction, right? So that I'm interpreting what it is that you need correctly, right? And then, okay, we demo the product and then make small changes based on the feedback that they receive. So the process itself, I actually think is really interesting. It's super exciting to see somebody's vision come to life, right? And then also for them to be included in it and for their stress to be alleviated from it. So it's pretty cool because the software that you create, whenever you're creating it in an agile environment like that, it's made specifically for the client, right? To fit their specific business need, their specific workforce like a glove, right? It's specific to them. So that's like as if, imagine, right? A Target in the middle of nowhere is complete in Montana. It's completely different from a Target in DC. They have a different clientele, right? They have different needs, right? They have probably different entrances and vice versa. So the POS system that a developer would create, right, in a DC, a high volume, a high traffic location is probably a different POS system that they create with a low foot traffic.
Okay, that sounds very, 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 very interesting.
Yeah, it is. So, you know, what we're building the person is made specifically for that organization, their culture, their workforce, right? And it's like, all right, we're not going to make something super complicated if I recognize that your workforce is baby boomers, are people who still need a little bit hand-holding with the software. And then towards the end of the process too, right, as the business analyst, I can also facilitate by transitioning the workforce into using, right, that software that we've developed through change management. And again, that's also something that I did so many times through T-Mobile, right? Somebody walks into the store, they've been using an iPhone 6. Now all of a sudden their phone broke and we're on the iPhone 16. How are you going to function? How am I going to get you acclimated and adjusted from using an iPhone 6 to now getting acclimated with the times? It's a drastic change. And if I don't walk you through it and talk you through it well, you're just going to come back the next day frustrated and want to return that phone. And you're going to curse me out when I hit you with an $80 restocking fee because you opened it up and you took it out the box.
Okay.
So it's important for me, right, as an analyst to recognize the customer, who that person is, what they value, right, what their strengths, what their weaknesses are, what their capabilities are, right, and then pivot them into that to get them to use it. And that's done like through little by little by little by little. So I like what I do. I'm really, I'm good at it. I'm comfortable with it. And it's nice to be a part of something much bigger. And then it's also cool too, because I now am in a position to where I serve a lot of value. I act as a servant leader, but I'm not bogged down with all the other tasks, right, of being responsible for something from start to finish. There is a project management component in there, but I'm not the project manager, thank God.
Okay. Okay, we're going to slowly transition out of this. I did want one more question, though. What is the pay range you can make in this role from low to medium, like to high? Like, what is the pay range you can get in this role?
That's a great question. So me personally, the lowest offer that I've ever seen from a business analyst position was, I think, $70K, and I felt like that was, like, different.
You can't survive on $70K. $70K is not that much in this area.
After tax? But yeah.
$70K is really $40K.
Yeah, and I really don't see that often. I think that was just a one-off that I had seen. But again, so the business analyst role, we're in so many different industries, but specifically within tech, right? that can look different. Obviously, I can speak from the software development realm. The ones that I'm coming across are usually at the least in the low 100s, right? I've seen things from, in fact, Johns Hopkins had one that was posted. They needed a business analyst to help them implement like a new EKG machine, and that one was going for 164. So typically what I see is like the lower six figures, like hovering around at least like 95 to I've seen as high as like, I think like 174 for like business process analysts. So it really just depends the nature of the work that you're doing and vice versa, which is why it's really important to look at that job requirement.
Okay, so that's good. So you can make, you said what's the highest again?
That I've seen personally, I think like 170 something, but the most recent was like 164.
164. Okay, so you can make some good money.
Yeah, you can make good money. And then again, the lifestyle, right? And outside of obviously the comfortable standard of living from that pay is why specifically I have such a soft space in my heart for software development, is because working in an agile Scrum environment means that I work in sprints, right? That means that depending on where we are in the life cycle of the application, are we in the testing phase? Are we in the launch phase? Are we in the gathering requirements phase? That dictates how my working day looks, right? So on average, right, currently, depending on the nature of your role, like I have about 2 to 3 meetings per day, and I have about 5 hours on average to budget my time accordingly to prepare for the next day. So that puts me in a position to where I have a healthier work-life balance, right? I also happen to be remote. I go into office, I think, once a quarter, maybe once a month. So that allows me the flexibility to, like I said, I get to go to the gym. I can pop out over DC if I need to. I can host. I have the energy and the time to do these things. A last minute doctor's appointment, right? I can just book that and budget my day around that. So that to me is a major blessing and something that I won't take for granted, because I understand that a lot of other roles are not like that and don't provide me that flexibility.
I love it. And can you kind of briefly talk about, so you've done this role, your business analyst. Can you briefly talk about the business that you're doing now?
Oh, yes. The business that I'm doing now, very exciting about it. We talked a little bit about earlier, celebrating the launch of a consulting service that I have. I recognized really unexpectedly that so many people had no idea what a business analyst was, or that this even is a viable career option, or how that they can literally start with the experience that they have, whether it's retail like me, or maybe a background or from another space in tech, and pivot into business analysis. So the service that I provide is essentially a one-on-one coaching and mentorship service, where I offer the ability to do career strategy support, where I help you reframe your resume, understand the role of a business analyst. I also prep you for the interview phase, that skill again of selling yourself, right? How to market yourself coming from a different unrelated field like I did, right? I recognize that's a skill set that a lot of people need help strengthening that. And then 2, which is a service that I'm biased, it's my most favorite one, because obviously I can talk about this on and on and on and on, where I break down from start to finish the role of a business analyst, specifically within software development. I talk about who the key players are. I talk about what software development is, right? And then I specifically hone in on the role of the business analyst in software development. And most importantly, I teach you how to engage with all the members of the IT team, because a major part of business analysis, you're speaking to so many people. You're in touch with a project manager, a solutions architect, a software developer, a client. That client could be a doctor. That client could be a janitor. That client could be a teacher. That client could be a lawyer, anything. How do you engage with all these various people, including, right, the software that you're working with, right? So if you're working with Apple, you may be meeting once a week with Apple.
Okay.
And, how do you interact and engage with all of these people? So I just walk you through it and I teach you, because I wish somebody would have helped me out. That would have, completely changed my financial situation and tremendously had impacted me had I known this, and it would have given me the confidence to catapult me so much further along in my career. And I feel that now I'm really passionate about, I wish, hey, I tripped over a rock. Let me turn around and let somebody know, you might want to go this way.
Yes, it sounds like a great business. Where can they find you?
So you can definitely find me on Instagram. You'll see a little bit about my business at juststart.community. And from there, you'll see my link tree. my Linktree, I give you the opportunity to have obviously a free consultation with me. I want to get to know you, see how I can help you, if I can point you in the direction, if we're a good fit for one another. And then I'm offering my services, those 2 services, the pivoting strategy and support, as well as the industry insights for business analysts, specifically in software development. That one's game-changing, and appointments are filling up pretty quick.
Okay. So, Dahlia, I appreciate you for coming on. There's 2 things that I'd like to lead the audience with. What are your goals in the next 5 years? Like, what do you want to do? Give me something big.
Okay, cool. Goals, personal or professional or both?
It could be whatever. Just give it something big. You can make $10 million. You can be the biggest consulting business. Give me something that I will come back to you and ask you what you're going to do. Or somebody might see you and be like, oh, you did that.
Okay, I'll give you a goal. It might not sound big, but it's big to me. For sure, right? I see myself speaking at a summit, right? I talked about, I once went to a summit before. I was like, I could explain this so much clearer and so much simpler. That's going to be me for a fact. So you're going to see me somewhere on stage speaking about the role of a business analyst, specifically within software development for a fact, right? You're also probably going to see me engaging and building community with others, right? I really see myself hosting workshops, getting people to gather together and showing you like, hey, this is a major part. Let me show you how to gather requirements. We can all do something fun so we can connect with one another, build with one another. So you have a little insight on a day in my life and vice versa. And then, honestly, I'll probably be a wife and a mother in the next 5 years. So
I know that.
Yeah.
That's probably the best one. I love, for me, I love, nobody wants to be a wife no more. You know, from my opinion, you know, I've been living in DMV for a long time, so I don't hear that no more. But I love all the goals. You definitely can do speaking at a summit probably this year.
Honestly.
Just apply.
Yeah.
And everything you're doing is very great. So it's going to happen probably faster.
Yeah.
Now, and when you speak it might happen a little bit faster.
Listen, I spoke this into existence. What?
Last year.
I really did it.
Because I was talking to you about it. I was like, you might as well just do something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I think I said that when I first met you. I was like, you don't need to do something. And you probably wouldn't have it on your mind.
I love that for me. And that's why it's good for me to say it out loud. Because I said I wanted to be a business analyst, right? Quit, moved to DC, boom, became a business analyst. I said I was going to do this. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm sitting on the podcast with you. So the things that I do say, I follow up with them. And I love that for me. And it builds my confidence. So you'll see me in 5 years.
Yeah, give me a quote you want to lead the audience with. It can be a quote, a statement, anything that you want to lead the audience with.
I love this. The most important quote is a quote that I take from my journey and is actually the name of my consulting service. The quote I want to say is, everyone starts somewhere, so just start where you are. I just so happen to start at a T-Mobile store.
Dahlia, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. We definitely got to dive into this business analyst more. I'm definitely going to hit you up on the personal side to kind of understand this a little bit better, to help my business and to, help better understand, like, how does a business run?
Of course. I'd love to do that more in depth next time. I'll learn.
Okay, most definitely. So thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for coming on the Tech Woke Podcast. Remember, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, share the video. To anybody that wants to become a business analyst, actually check out techwokepodcast.com. Check out the videos, check out some merch, subscribe to the newsletter. Also, check out RMF Academy. If you're a new person in cybersecurity, having a career transition, and you're trying to get into RMF, check out RMF Academy. I got courses. Join the newsletter. We're going to start posting things every week so you can get you in this field. It could be news, courses, or things that can help you understand RMF. So thank you, everybody, for watching the podcast. Remember, everybody, get 1% better every day. Peace out. I'll see you on the next one.